Oh, yay, it works. Phew. Oh my gosh, I just got a thing that said live streaming is not available right now. And I was like, no, we are not going to have 2 days in a row of technical difficulties. Good morning. Happy, terrific Tuesday. I always have to think about what day of the week it is. Fantastic morning for me. First of all, my husband brought me fancy coffee from the Boy and the Bear, which is way too pricey for me. But occasionally my husband and I do funny bets. And yesterday's bet was about avocado toast of all things. And I won. So he brought me a, what is it called? Salted caramel latte from Boy and the Bear. So good. Secondly, I thought I'd start our morning with 2 would you rathers. Now, obviously, I can't hear your responses, but you can shout them out at home, talk to your family about them. I mean, they're always good conversation pieces. All right, the first one is, would you rather fight 100 toddlers or 100 90-year-olds? That's a tough one, right? So first instinct, I'm like, oh, 100 toddlers, I could take them out in 2 seconds. But then the reality is, would you really want to fight toddlers? I'd feel horrible knocking them down. And then the 190-year-olds, they have weapons. You know, they have canes, they have their walkers. I mean, who knows what they're going to poke me with? Angry 90-year-olds. Although my neighbor, he's 89. He's not angry. I think either way, I would feel bad fighting either one of them because, I mean, 90-year-olds you shouldn't be fighting and toddlers you shouldn't be fighting. But if I had to go against a battalion of 100 of something, I don't know. I say we go with the 90-year-olds. I think I'll grab a cane and we'll like lightsaber fight. I like that because then we're not actually hitting each other. All right. So you talk about it at home and you decide what you would do. All right. The second one comes from this card. This one's interesting. Would you rather be best friends with Bert on Sesame Street or Ernie? Now, I realize some of you may not have watched Sesame Street growing up. I loved Sesame Street growing up. I loved all the songs. I loved Big Bird. I loved Oscar. Who is it? Mr. Cooper's store. And Bert and Ernie are, I guess they're roommates. Are they best friends? I'm not sure. And they're totally different, right? I think I'd go with Ernie on this one because Ernie's a little bit more positive and kind of free spirit and kind of up for everything. And Bert's really smart, but he's kind of more cranky and he's always like, rah. So I think I'd go with Ernie on this one. Wonder what my husband would say. I'm going to ask him later. I bet he'd pick Bert. We'll see. All right. That was fun. Starting with a little would you rather. All right. Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe. Yesterday was the weirdest ever. We had audio. I read through 2 chapters yesterday and then got all these messages saying, Ms. Cummins, you started with audio and then all of a sudden you didn't have audio. And I thought, oh, they must be crazy. They're doing something wrong. So I watched the playback and the exact same thing happened. 3 minutes in, all of a sudden, now there's no mute button on my side, so I don't know what happened, but we're not going to do that today. The great part is I love chapter 2. And since I got to do a run through yesterday of voices and expressions, and I feel like today I'm going to be on point. So let's catch up where we're at. So yesterday we met all 4 children that were sent to London, outside of London, to the countryside to live with the professor because there are air raids going on in London. They're trying to protect their children from the bombs. They go to sleep for the first night. They're excited to go out and explore in the wilderness and the land around the castle where the professor lives, but it's raining. So then they're like, well, let's go explore inside this house. And they keep finding all these empty rooms and there'll be like one thing in the room and passageways and hallways. And I kind of imagine like a bookshelf that you like secret bookshelf that turns into a passageway. And they come into one room that has a dead blue bottle, which always gets me because I think, what does he mean by a dead blue bottle? Is it broken? Is it old? Is it on its side so it looks like it's dead? That always is just confusing to me. It probably means nothing, but I read into it. And then there's a wardrobe, which is a standing closet. And all the other kids run off, but Lucy decides to go explore it. She goes into the wardrobe. There's lovely fur coats. And then she's like, oh, this is so great. And she keeps going farther back and farther back and farther back, expecting to hit the back of the closet. But instead, she ends up in this wood with snow under her feet. It's really cold. So, of course, she grabs a jacket. Maybe she didn't. She should have. So she sees a light off in the distance and she's young. So most of us would probably be like, forget this, I'm going back. But she's kind of curious about the light and she's like, oh, the wardrobe's open. So, I'll just go check out what this light is. So she goes towards the light and there's this lamppost in the middle of this, winter forest, middle of nowhere. There's just this light lamppost that's lit up. And as she gets to the lamppost, all of a sudden she hears a pitter patter of feet, and in walks a fawn who's half goat, half human, has little horns coming out of his head. He's carrying parcels like he's been Christmas shopping, and an umbrella over his head to protect him from the snow. And he goes, oh, goodness gracious me. The parcels go everywhere. Lucy's freaked out. And so we don't know if this person's good or if they're bad. We shall find out. Right? All right. Oh, and I got new glasses yesterday. Dig in my new glasses. See what you guys think. What do you guys think? Pretty cool, right? Okay. What Lucy found there. Chapter 2. Good evening. Oh, it's a little girl. Good evening, said Lucy. But the fawn was so busy picking up his parcels that at first he did not reply. When it had finished, it made her a little bow. Oh, good evening, said the fawn. Excuse me, I don't want to be inquisitive, but should I be right in thinking that you are a daughter of Eve? My name's Lucy, said she, not quite understanding him. But you are, forgive me, you are what they call a girl, cried the fawn. Of course I'm a girl. You are, in fact, human. Of course I'm human, said Lucy, still a little puzzled by his questions. Oh, to be sure, said the fawn. How stupid of me, but I've never seen a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve before. I am delighted. That is to say, and then it stopped as if it had been going to say something it had not intended, but had remembered in time. Oh, delighted, it went on. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tumnus. Now, a little background, because when I read this in the classroom, the kids tend to get a little confused. Like, why does he say, are you a daughter of Eve or a son of Adam? Now, a little background on our author, C.S. Lewis. He didn't write his first children's book till he was like in his 40s, maybe even his 50s. Most of the books that he wrote were theology books that are basically books about the Bible or investigating his thoughts on the Bible. And for those of you that are familiar with, one of the first stories is Adam and Eve. And in the Bible, he talks about the first woman was Eve and the first man was Adam. So in this, they call humans that are females daughters of Eve, and they call humans that are males, they call them sons of Adam. So when that comes up again, you'll understand. I'm very pleased to meet you, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy. And may I ask, oh, Lucy, daughter of Eve, said Mr. Tumnus, have you come into Narnia? Narnia? What's that? Said Lucy. This is the land of Narnia, said the fawn. Where we are now, all that lies between the lamppost and the great castle of Cair Paravel on the eastern sea. And you have come from the wild woods of the west? No, I got in through the wardrobe in the spare room over there, said Lucy. Ah, said Mr. Tumnus in a rather melancholy voice. If only I had worked harder at geography when I was a little fawn, I should no doubt know all about these strange countries. It is too late now. But they aren't countries at all, said Lucy, almost laughing. It's only just right back there, at least. Oh, I'm not sure. It's actually summer there. Meanwhile, said Mr. Tumnus, it is winter in Narnia and has been forever so long, and we shall both catch cold if we stand here talking in the snow. Daughter of Eve from the far land of Spare where eternal summer reigns around the bright city of Wardrobe. How would it be if you came and had a bit of tea with me? Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy, but I was wondering whether I ought to be getting back. It's only just around the corner, said the fawn, and there'll be a roaring fire, and toast, and sardines, and cake. Okay, that's good. Well, it's very kind of you, said Lucy, but I shan't be able to stay for very long. So I told you I have the collector's edition, so we have a colorful picture of Lucy and the fawn walking off to have tea. Well, if you will take my arm, daughter of Eve, said Mr. Tumnus, I shall be able to hold the umbrella over both of us. That's the way. Now off we go. And so Lucy found herself walking through the wood arm in arm with this strange creature as if they had known one another their entire lives. They had not gone far before they came to a place where the ground became rough and there were rocks all about and little hills up and little hills down. At the bottom of one small valley, Mr. Tumnus turned suddenly aside as if he were going to walk straight into an unusually large rock. But at the last moment, Lucy found he was leading her into the entrance of a cave. As soon as they were inside, she found herself blinking in the light of a wood fire. And then Mr. Tumnus stooped and took a flaming piece of wood out of the fire with a neat little pair of tongs and lit a lamp. "Now, we shan't be long," he said, and immediately he put a kettle on. Lucy thought she had never been in a nicer place. It was a little, dry, clean cave of reddish stone with a carpet on the floor and two little chairs. "One for me and one for a friend," said Mr. Tumnus. "And a table and a dresser and a mantelpiece over the fire, and above that a picture of an old faun with a gray beard." In one corner there was a door which Lucy thought must lead to Mr. Tumnus's bedroom, and on one wall was a shelf full of books. Lucy looked at these while he was setting out the tea things. They had weird titles like "The Life and Letters of Silenus," or "Nymphs and Their Ways of Men, Monks and Gamekeepers," "A Study in Popular Legend," or "Is Man a Myth?" "Now, daughter of Eve," said the faun, and really it was a wonderful tea. There was a nice brown egg, lightly boiled, for each of them, and then sardines on toast, and then buttered toast, and then toast with honey, and then sugar-topped cake. And when Lucy was tired of eating, the faun began to talk. He had wonderful tales to tell of life in the forest. He told about the midnight dances and how the nymphs who lived in the wells and the dryads who lived in the trees came out to dance with the fauns. About long hunting, and again, here's my picture of them hanging out in his little cave, which looks like a home. About long hunting parties after the milk-white stag who would give you wishes if you caught him, about feasting and treasure-seeking with the wild red dwarfs in deep mines and caverns far beneath the forest floor, and then about summer when the woods were green and old Silenus on his fat donkey would come to visit them, and sometimes Bacchus himself. And then the streams would run with wine instead of water, and the whole forest would give itself up to jollification for weeks on end. "Not that it isn't always winter now," he said gloomily. Then, to cheer himself up, he took out from its case on the dresser a strange little flute that looked as if it were made out of straw, and he began to play. Toot, 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 toot. And the tune he played made Lucy want to cry and laugh and dance and go to sleep all at the same time. It must have been hours later when she shook herself and said, "Oh, Mr. Tumnus, I'm so sorry to stop you, and I do love that tune, but really, I must go home. I only meant to stay for a few minutes." "Oh, it's no good now," said the faun, laying down his flute and shaking his head at her very sorrowfully. "No, no good?" said Lucy, jumping up and feeling rather frightened. "What do you mean? I've got to go home at once." The others will be wondering what has happened to me. But a moment later she asked, "Mr. Tumnus, whatever is the matter?" For the fawn's brown eyes had filled with tears, and then the tears began trickling down its cheeks, and soon they were running off the end of his nose, and at last he covered his face with his hands and he began to howl. "Oh, Mr. Tumnus, Mr. Tumnus," said Lucy in great distress. Don't, what's the matter?" "Aren't you well? Dear Mr. Tumnus, do tell me what's wrong." But the fawn continued sobbing as if his heart would break. And even when Lucy went over and put her arms around him and lent him her handkerchief, he didn't stop. He merely took the handkerchief and kept on using it. Then he was wringing it out with both hands whenever it got too wet to be any worse use, so that presently Lucy was standing in a big damp patch. "Mr. Tumnus," bawled Lucy in his ear, shaking him. "Do stop! Stop it at once! You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a great big fawn like you. What on earth are you crying about?" "Oh," sobbed Mr. Tumnus. "I'm crying because I'm such a bad fawn." "Well, I don't think you're a bad fawn at all," said Lucy. "I think you're a very good fawn. You're the nicest fawn I've ever met." Probably the only one she's ever met. "Oh, you wouldn't say that if you knew." "No, I'm a very bad fawn. I don't suppose there ever was a worse fawn since the beginning of the world." "But what have you done exactly?" asked Lucy. "My old father now," said Mr. Tumnus. "That's his picture over there on the mantelpiece. He would never have done something like this." "A thing like what?" asked Lucy. "Like what I've done. I've taken service under the White Witch. That's what I am. I'm in pay of the White Witch." "The White Witch? Who is she?" Why, it's she that has got all of Narnia under her thumb. It is she that makes it always winter, and never Christmas. Can you imagine that? Oh, that's awful, said Lucy. But what does she pay you to do? Oh, that's the worst of it, said Mr. Tumnus. I'm a kidnapper for her. That's what I am. Look at me, daughter of Eve. Would you believe that I'm the sort of fawn to meet a poor, innocent child in the wood, and one that had never done me any harm, and pretend to be friendly with it and invite it home to my cave, all for the sake of lulling it to sleep and then handing her over to the White Witch? No, said Lucy. I'm sure you wouldn't do anything of the sort. But I have, said the fawn. Well, said Lucy rather slowly, for she wanted to be truthful, yet not be so hard on him. Well, that is actually pretty bad. But you're sorry. You're sorry for it, I'm sure, and you'll never do it again. Daughter of Eve, don't you understand? Said the fawn. It isn't something I have done. I'm doing it right now at this very moment. Whoa, what do you mean? Cried Lucy, turning very white. You are the child, said Tumnus. I had orders from the White Witch that if I ever saw a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve in the wood, I was to catch them and hand them over to her. And you are the first that I've ever met, and I've pretended to be your friend, and I asked you to tea, and all the time I've been meaning to wait till you were asleep and then go tell her. Oh, but you wouldn't, right, Mr. Tumnus? Said Lucy. You won't, will you? Indeed, indeed, you really mustn't. And if I don't, said he, beginning to cry again, she's gonna find out, and she'll have my tail cut off. I love my tail. My horn sawn off, and my beard plucked out. And she'll wave her wand over my beautiful cloven hoofs, and she'll turn them into horrid solid hoofs like a wretched horse's. And if she's extra and specially angry with me, she'll turn me into stone, and I'll only get to be a statue of a fawn in her horrible house until the 4 thrones at Cair Paravel are filled, and goodness knows when that'll happen, or whether it'll even happen at all. Oh, I'm very sorry, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy, but please, will you let me go home? Of course I will, said the fawn. Of course, I've got to. I see that now. I hadn't known what humans were like before I met you. Of course I can't give you up to the witch, now that I know you now. But we must be off at once. I'll see you back to the lamppost. I suppose you can find your way home from there back to Spare and the wardrobe? Oh, I'm sure I can find it, said Lucy. We must go as quietly as we can, said Mr. Tumnus. The whole wood is full of her spies. Even some of the trees are on her side. Now remember, we're in a fantasy world, so trees talk, rocks talk, things that don't really happen in the real world. They both got up and they left the tea things on the table, and Mr. Tumnus once more put up his umbrella and gave Lucy his arm. So here's them rushing back to the lamppost, as quick as can be. So now Mr. Tumnus is putting his own life on the line here. And they went out into the snow. The journey back was not at all like the journey to the fawn's cave. They stole along as quickly as they could without speaking a single word, and Mr. Tumnus kept to the darkest places. Lucy was relieved when they reached the lamppost again. Do you know your way from here, daughter of Eve? Said Tumnus. Lucy looked very hard between the trees and could just see in the distance a patch of light that looked like daylight. Yes, she said, I can see the wardrobe door. Then be off home as quick as you can, said the fawn. Oh, and can you ever forgive me for what I meant to do? Why, of course I can, said Lucy, shaking him heartily by the hand, and I do hope you won't get into dreadful trouble on my account. Farewell, daughter of Eve, said he. Perhaps I can keep the handkerchief? Which is all wet and gross. Oh, rather, said Lucy, and then she ran toward the far-off patch of daylight as quickly as her legs would carry her. And presently, instead of rough branches brushing past her, she felt coats, and instead of crunching snow under her feet, she felt wooden boards. And all at once, she found herself jumping out of the wardrobe into the same empty room from which the whole adventure had started. She shut the wardrobe door tightly behind her and looked around, panting for breath. It was still raining, and she could hear the voices of the others inside the passage halls. I'm here! I'm here! She shouted. I've come back, and I'm all right. So, Lucy's gone on this little adventure, which imagine if you had a little sister around 5 years old and she comes running up and she's like, guys, I just went to the wardrobe and I went into this magical land and there was snow everywhere. And a person who was half goat and half human came up to me carrying parcels and an umbrella and invited me to tea. And he started freaking out and crying and said that he had to hand me over to the White Witch, but he didn't. And he walked me back here and I'm okay. can you just imagine, like, you look at your sister like, ooh, she's cuckoo, right? So we don't know how the siblings are going to respond to her. If they'll want to go in too, or if they think she's just making up stories and telling her to, hush up. We just don't know. Um, and then at the same time, I don't know about you guys, but when I read this, I still worry about the fawn. The first time I read it, I was like, oh no, the trees and everybody has eyes and ears and whatever. And I hope nobody reports back to the witch because now the fawn's life is in danger. His tail could be cut off, his horns plucked. I mean, turned into a statue. So he's risked his own life for this little girl that he just met. So of course, I'm worried about the fawn because that's a big deal, right? Like I said, to put your life on the line for someone that you just met. But I think Lucy was so cute. I mean, who could possibly resist trying to save her, right? All right. I think I put aside one more. Would you rather? What was it? No, where was that one? Oh, it's a Siamese. Okay, last one. Would you rather be a Siamese twin that's connected at the soles of your feet or by the lips? So connected by the lips or connected by the soles of your feet? Ooh, well, I like to talk a lot, so I don't know if about the lips would be good. But then if you're connected by the soles of your feet, how do you move around? I'm going to go with soles of your feet because at least I can talk. We could post up on the couch, binge watch some really good show, some Dude Perfect or something. Who knows? I'm going to go with soles of your feet. That's what I'm going with. All right. So today, as always, we're going to jump into our Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe reading response journal. Lesson 2, by the way, if you haven't done it already, please read this little blurb on C.S. Lewis. He has a really interesting life. Like I said, he didn't even write a children's book till much later in life. And he was a professor at, I think, Cambridge or Oxford University. Really, really smart guy. Chapter 2 with vocabulary. As always, you pick what 3 you would like to define. These words are all used in the chapter, so pick 3 that you'd like to define. You're going to answer your questions today. Cute little picture of the fawn. We have some open-ended questions. Don't forget to use complete sentences. You're going to draw your favorite part of today's chapter. And quick rate. In your own words, explain why you think Mr. Tumnus decides not to turn Lucy over to the White Witch. And I want you to be convincing. So don't just say, because he felt bad. That's not very convincing. So what do you think was going through his head? Why he's like, oh my gosh, I can't give her over. And what is his reasoning? And then I want you to draw a picture that goes with your reasoning. And then we have some true or falses down there and see how you do on that. All right, friends, we will continue with the story. Chapter 3 tomorrow. This afternoon, I'm meeting with Miss Cummins' class, 1 o'clock for social studies. Please bring your social studies text and your social studies chapter review packet. We'll go to that today. And what was the other thing I was going to say? I will be recording today or tomorrow lesson 4 of social studies. I'll let you guys know when it's up on my YouTube page. I recommend that you watch that and listen to that after you do lesson 3 with me live. So anytime between Wednesday and Friday, you're going to log in, listen to the lesson on lesson 4, and then you do your questions and vocab. I'll tell you which ones you need to do after watching that. And the reason we're doing that is we need to do our test next week so that we can get through one more chapter in social studies so that you are prepared for 5th grade, because that's usually where they take over after the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. Miss Cummins class. I'll see you at 1 o'clock. Love you. Miss you. See you soon. Bye.